Hi everyone, Justin McGill. Today I want to talk a little bit about common sense. What does common sense mean? We hear it thrown around a lot. Somebody has an idea and they say it's just good common sense. Everybody should do it. Or we have politicians saying that they want to take a common sense approach to a problem. So what is common sense? Sometimes we have an emotional response to something and we feel like, well, it's just common sense that we should handle this a certain way. Or sometimes somebody will say something and we'll think, boy, that sounds right. That's common sense. That's not what common sense is. Common sense essentially means that everybody can reach the same conclusion without having any additional education. So if we're going to practice theoretical physics, we would need a little additional education to be able to understand some of the problems that they work through. However, there's a lot of things that we can figure out without that additional education. Doesn't mean we can figure it out without a little bit of thinking. Critical thinking is very important to common sense. If we just assume that something feels right, therefore it is right, we could miss a lot of important facts that might play into our decisions. So common sense requires a little bit of critical thinking. So what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is somebody says something and you think, that sounds right, or that doesn't sound quite right. So then you need to ask, why does it sound right? Why doesn't it sound right? What facts do they have behind this? What assumptions are they making that they're basing this on? If we're afraid to question our own standings, then we don't have critical thinking. Critical thinking digs deep into everything. It questions everything. It looks for the substance behind everything and finds a logical connection from point A to point B and beyond. So if somebody says, well, I'm starting here at point A, and to get to point B, we have to use this common sense approach. And you stop and you think about it and you put it all together and you say, yes, that will get me from point A to point B in a very efficient manner. The next thing to do is to look at what happens when it gets down the road to point C. Is point C somewhere where we want to be, or is it way off in la-la land that we don't want to get to? So critical thinking questions motives. It questions assumptions. Assumptions get us in a lot of bad trouble. Sometimes we're taught something. Sometimes we learn something in school we've never heard different. And so we'll base our guesses on those assumptions rather than putting some factual understanding behind what we're saying and what we're doing. So when we look at some of the foundational documents around the origin of our country, around the Revolutionary War, the creation of our constitutions, our declarations of independence, it was a very big thing at that time to do a lot of writings and to lay everything out in a factual step-by-step basis to encourage people to read it, to think about it, and to decide whether or not they agree based on what was laid out before them. In fact, Thomas Paine's writing Common Sense was basically that. It was a layout of here's the king, here's the bad things that have occurred, and here's why they occurred, and then here's how we can correct those things. So it lays everything out, and it assumes that your basic everyday reader can not only follow those steps from point A to point B to point C, but can also decide for themselves, is this an intelligent way to go about this, or are there problems with this line of thinking? So every time you hear the word common sense going forward, I want you to think a little bit about critical thinking. And when we're talking about government, when we're talking about government theory, purpose of our government, things that they should and shouldn't be doing, I want you to take a little bit and think about the common sense of the Patriots. Do a little reading into the writings that they offered. All right, until next time, have a good day. Think hard.